We would like to acknowledge that this podcast is being recorded on the beautiful lands of the Larrakia people in Darwin. We pay our respects to elders past and present. We also acknowledge and honour the lives lost to violence and suicide. We recognise that meaningful change must happen together as a united community so the next generation can heal, grow and thrive in the Northern Territory.
My name is Chels, and this is part 2 of our special 2-part series on Unbreakable Voices. In this episode, I'll be talking with Karen, my co-host, and someone whose journey I deeply admire. Together we open up about our lived experiences with domestic violence, 2 very different stories, both marked by pain, survival and strength. For me, there are things I've skimmed over, not because they're unimportant, but because bringing them up is still incredibly difficult. I've done a lot to move forward, and sometimes going back into those memories feels like reopening wounds I've tried so hard to heal from. This isn't the full story, but it's an important part of it, one that I hope helps others feel seen, heard, and a little less alone. I know I'll share more in time when I'm ready, because healing is a process, and telling our stories is part of that. This is Unbreakable Voices, and this is my story.
We're coming back to the second part of our interview, which is talking to Chelsea about her lived experience with domestic violence. Okay. So, Chelsea, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Yeah, I'm a Territorian. I was born in Katherine. Parents lived in Pine Creek for a couple of years, and my old man was a bush copper. I spent the majority of my life growing up out at Kakadu. Those relationships, everything that we had out there, we still maintain today. He was a well-respected man, my dad, and he understood Aboriginal mob and people, and he did policing in a very different way. And I was really fortunate to grow up out there. We were a very close-knit community. I guess, long story short, our family moved into Darwin when I was the age of 13. And it was a big world to me, Darwin. I mean, we only came into Darwin when we used to go to the cinema, or, you know, we didn't have McDonald's and things like that. It was a big treat for us. When we moved in, I definitely noticed the change in dynamics with where I felt as a person, or securities and things like that. Darwin was a whole different kettle of fish to where I grew up from. And in that, you know, I was a very outgoing kid. Sporty, popular, dancing, you know, did junior police rangers and did dancing several times a week, and used to run for NT and terrace and swimming training every morning, and there was kind of nothing that I didn't do in that space. You know, I grew up with my dad being who he was and my mum being a teacher. I was always busy. I was always doing something. My parents always made sure we were involved, and we did stuff every single day. I mean, I did swimming every morning before school. I think that I'm going to jump between things, and that's because for me, I said to Karen before we jumped into this, and I said I'd written down probably 50 or so times about how to have this conversation about my story, and at every time that I wrote it down, I said I don't know where to start.
Yeah. So in saying that, I guess, what was your first experience of violence?
I grew up in a very loving family. I never even saw my dad swear at my mother. I'd never seen violence. I was very privileged in that sense. And some would say, you know, privileged white family. My parents were battlers anyway. I mean, it wasn't in that sense that we were privileged. They worked very hard. But at the age of 15, I was at the Nightcliff bowling alley, and I met this 18-year-old, this fellow who was... Everyone at the time was sort of doing other things at school, and the boys were pressuring girls to get into sexual activities and things like that. And I met this bloke, and I thought he was the best thing since sliced bread. He loved everything that I loved too, you know, Tracy Chapman and Dire Straits and bush and fishing and motorbikes and all of that stuff. And we connected, and we entered into a relationship when I was 15. It was very exciting, and I'd never been in a relationship before. It was my first relationship, and yeah, I was showered in praises and love, and I thought that he loved me because everyone at school at the time were having sex or doing what they're doing, and he wasn't even trying to do that with me when we first met. So I thought that meant that something like I was special because he was still hanging around me.
Yeah.
And I fell at 15, as you do. I fell very quickly in love with him. It was a very intense relationship, almost immediately. We spent every waking moment together. He convinced me to move out of home. I dropped out of school, move out of home. And my parents, I was sort of jumping from house to house with friends and being the word, not complying. I didn't want to comply with rules and I wanted to be independent. And I thought that I was this grown woman at 15. At 15, I thought I was a grown woman. And so I took off and I left, and basically we ended up in this relationship that my parents even had to intervene in because they could kind of see that things weren't quite right. And it started with small things, more coercive control and put downs and things like that. And so I was so desperate to be this person that he wanted. And I kind of lost all of who I was. I mean, I quit dancing and I quit everything that I cared about or I'd done most of my life to be this person that he wanted because I thought that I loved him so much. I didn't even know what love was in a relationship sense at that age because it was my first experience. When I finally moved in with him, the very first night, we didn't have the technology that we do now back then and pretty shitty phones. And he had accused me of talking to other blokes or that kind of nature. And, he punched me straight between the eyes and split that open, did my jaw and bashed my head against walls and things like that. And I had tried to run away, and that was the first incident. I did get away, and I about some hours later and went back to my parents' house, and they had my mum was cradling me on the lounge, and I felt very confused. And he actually came to the house and said she did this to herself, and she came off a motorbike and all these things. And he had convinced my father, like in those minutes, that I remember my dad walking back in as I'm shaking, Mum's holding me on the lounge, and he actually asked me, "Did he do this to you?" And I thought, I didn't answer, and he knew straight away. So he went out and went off at this fella and, get out of my house and don't come back again. He did come back at 2:00 that morning. He took me from my parents' home. He had a fillet knife and had a yellow blade, and he said he was going to kill me or kill my mum, my dad and my brother, and he said, "I'm going to make you watch them die slowly." So I left.
Did your parents know that he told you this?
At later stage, yes, they did. So initially they thought I'd just taken off. I'd taken off again. So he took me back to where his parents resided, which was very an isolated place. There was no houses around. There was nothing around. It was without identifying who they are, of the property, there was no one around. And he was holding a knife to my throat, making me tell my mum that I hated her and I didn't want to come home, and all I wanted to do was say, "Come and get me."
Yeah.
The abuse from then on, for some weeks, physical abuse, emotional and psychological abuse, was so damaging that I think in that very short time I was already fucked. I was told when to eat, sleep. If I went to the bathroom without permission, I would be smacked around the head, things like that.
So hold on, how old were you? 15?
I was 15.
How old was he?
18.
18. Okay. Yeah.
I guess my story, there was a lot of physical violence. It went on for a period of 18 months, and during that period he actually went to prison for assaults against another young person, another woman, girl, I should say. She was a girl. She was of the same age. And he was given a 3-year sentence. He served only 4 months of that. During that time, my parents saw an opportunity to have an intervention and services and everything else because the violence was horrific. And when I say the violence was horrific, I had, I think it was up to 7-8 broken noses in total, ribs and that sort of thing. I've as I said, I didn't know where to start with this, because when I talk about some of the offences, and I have to take myself back there, and I just want to sort of put out, before I go into that, my strategy, or how I coped, since that was to dissociate. I convinced myself for many years that it didn't happen to me and it wasn't me.
Right.
And I had to black it out of my brain.
Was there anyone that you could talk to, or you felt comfortable to talk to, or you just felt dissociated?
I did. My dad, in fact, ended up, went very much later into what we're talking about, ended up into the trial when he was arrested in the Supreme Court. And my dad left his job and everything, and my mother and my brother, and he took me down south. And in his own words, which was something I only read the other day, as you know, I went to extreme lengths to obtain the transcripts of the trial. And I don't think I was quite prepared to read or see some of those things from so long ago. But yeah, my dad spoke to, in his victim impact statement, which was read out in court, that, you know, he drove me around over 6,000 kilometres.
Yeah.
And we would just talk. And sometimes we wouldn't talk. He would just hold my hand and play music, and we would cry. And we did that for months. Both of my parents were my biggest supporters. Like, whilst my dad was with me, my mum was managing things at home.
Yeah.
I'm sort of jumping forward here, but I sort of go back to the experience that I went through. I've spoken about the physical violence, and some of that entailed I had a baseball bat put through the back of my head.
Yeah.
When that occurred, or a lot of... Yeah, I apologise, because it's really hard, because there were so many physical assaults.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Just
so
take it slow.
Sometimes I think when I want to talk to one thing, my mind jumps.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there was so much, that it was so compacted, and that things I tried to block out. Anyway, I'll sort of try and get back to the body of what we
That's
were
okay.
saying.
It's your story, so
I've
you tell
just
it
so you
how...
know, I've had a breakdown before coming on, as Karen knows, and I've I've probably told my story so many times, maybe from the third or fourth person, and fluently and very easily. When we came to talking about this podcast and the importance of what it meant, I had to really go back into my past and things that I'd buried for a very long time, and a lot of sleepless nights the last couple of weeks.
Lots of tears,
Lots of tears coming into this, and things that I thought that I had dealt with, in being who I am in my career and the person that I am now, to really realise that it's still parts of those things that I buried, still very raw.
Yeah. So on that, like those feelings, like you said, are still very raw. How have you been dealing with it?
I think I didn't I didn't have a 16th birthday. I didn't have an 18th, and I didn't have a 21st. When the trial, when it went to trial, my case, the reports from numerous psychologists and psychiatrists were that it wasn't just a violent relationship. They labelled it as sadistic.
Yeah.
And something that they said that in writing that I was not going to come back from, or I was not going to sustain employment, or that was really hard for me to hear. I remember during the trial, I was constantly reintroducing myself to the prosecutors and the barristers and everyone that was involved in the case, because I didn't remember it. The state that I was in by the time that he was actually taken into custody, which was December 3rd, 2002, I was so fragile and so beaten down and so controlled in that relationship that the bubbly person I didn't know how to talk to people, and it was always, you fucking talk when you're spoken.
Yeah.
They were like, she's not going to come back. She's fucked.
Yeah.
And that was even the defence's psychs when they tried to say that that my pain and my story and my trauma had to be justified and proven, which was really difficult, and being pulled on the stand and some of the things that I was put through during that process.
So at that age you were what, 16?
By the time it went to court, 16 and a half, close to 17. I remember sort of hearing that when they were saying I was never going to come back. When I was a kid, if you told me I couldn't do something,
You'd do it.
well, watch this, Bundy, let's go.
Yeah.
You know,
and you have done it though.
Yeah, and my mum used to say you were the smallest on the team and you could hear you huffing and puffing and dying, but you always gave it no matter what. And if someone said I couldn't do something, it was abseiling or this or that, and I'd do all this stupid shit. I'm like, well, sit back because... And I remember when they said that about me in the court, that it was over for me, basically, that I was going to be this damaged goods or, you know, and not going to recover.
Yep.
And the expectancy when that was going to happen.
And you look back, like if someone had told your daughter that, how horrific that would have been for, you know, for her and for your parents as well to hear.
Yeah. I think that, you know, we talk about the impact that it's had, the impact it had on me. I didn't get to be a young person. I didn't have those years between 16 and 21 and years after that. And I can speak to, you know, we speak about relationships. It was almost like I just kept inviting violent relationships in without realising. So it wasn't just that, it was ongoing but for such a long time. I mean, the way that I saw myself, the psychological impact, I think, on my parents was just so severe. What it did to my father's career, what it did to my mum. And when we talk about generational trauma, what I've done to my own daughter, my eldest, through moments where I wasn't coping.
Yeah.
And being accountable for that, which I've only really just coming forward and realising the hurt that she has suffered too from my own pain.
And she's an amazing young woman too.
She is. She really is. I've been really lucky and blessed. I think that had I not had the structure of the good supports of my family and my friends, there was no way I was coming out of this. Yep. There was no quick fix. This didn't happen overnight. I worked my fucking ass off. I mean, counselling 3-4 times a week. I spent 6 months in a psychiatric hospital in Queensland.
Did you feel for you the counselling worked?
Parts
to a certain
of
point?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to say that reaching out and those sorts of services, that doesn't work, because, I mean, that's what we do. There were most certainly parts of that worked, but I was very angry. So I wasn't just dealing with the trauma, I was dealing with an immaturity level, you know, being so young.
Brain not fully developed yet.
Not developed and all that sort of stuff. And I was a very angry, hurt young person. I went from this bubbly, happy kid to so angry after what happened. And, you know, a lot of what happened to me, you know, I was sexually assaulted and quite violently.
Was that by the same
person,
perpetrator?
when I was young. And that's recorded on audio, which, as you know, we're hoping to get our hands on, and we're very close to doing so. Those sorts of things. And, you know, some of the violence that I had endured, people say to me, oh, you know, I thought I was going to die, and, you know, in general chit-chat, and I'm like, I've been there, you know. You know, I've had the perpetrator at the time actually had a 12-gauge shotgun, and he told me to run. How fast can you run? Can you run faster than bullets? And he would fire this firearm and the bullets would be flying past me as he made me run down a straight line and laughing the duration of doing that. He broke me down to a point that I would, you know, he took me out bush and told me, had beaten me quite badly, and ring your mummy and daddy and say goodbye because I brought you here to kill you.
And that's where that mental abuse torture comes from.
And had a shovel, mind you, made me take all my clothes off and start digging. You're never going to see your mummy again. I just wanted my parents. I remember running through it was in dry season, and the long grass, or the spinifex, was really high. I had no clothes, and the sharpness of it cutting my skin, running. And I stopped running because I went into shock, and, you know, you can run but you can't hide. No one can hear you screaming out here. And these were the taunts that I got, and I remember falling to the ground, just couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. Yeah. You see all these movies where, you know, people, run, bitch, when you're in it, and it's the body is a fucking amazing thing. and sometimes not so amazing in that retrospect, that it shuts down. And it did shut down on me. And I remember being on the ground and just violently shaking, and he picked me up off the ground and held my head against his chest, and he was patting my hair, and he's like, "Oh, it's okay, baby, you're safe now. No one's going to hurt you." And you're sitting there and you're just fucked. You're mentally, you don't understand. It's hard to explain. You're just gone.
How long did you experience this for?
18 months, yeah, on and off. He went to prison during that time, as I said, and I was set up I had my own unit, and Mum helped me and the services helped me, and he was trying to contact me from inside prison, and I was contacting back, and I was like, "Oh, I love you too," and singing song lyrics and writing song lyrics, and as like a kid, like I was a kid.
Well, you was a kid.
Yeah, and he got out, and the day that he got out, he, bang, access, and I'd written him love letters, and I just didn't see anyone else, and he made sure that I had no friends, no one was around. He very much isolated me, but the psychological trauma of that, there were times where a particular time, for instance, he held me down in the caravan on the property, and for over 4 hours whispered in my ear, whilst punching me, gave me a perforated eardrum. I can never swim underwater again, and it never healed. That, you're nothing, nobody loves you, you're fucking, look at you, you slut, you this, you that, fucking whack. And I just wanted to go home. I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to go home. And yet even when we went to court when he was arrested, and the night that he was arrested was when he took me out bush and, I'm going to kill you. And then when my father and the police, we got him. We finally got him. And I was like, how could you take him away from me? Because I was so fucked. I was very mentally...
Did you ever feel guilt? Just for in general, like going through my experiences, if the partner was ever locked up for what was going on in the house, against me, I actually started feeling guilty about it.
No,
if he was locked up.
I'll talk to that. So when he... there were quite some really severe physical assaults. He put a base bat through my head. I remember that night very well. And he handed me the bat and he said, "You've got 5 seconds to knock me out or I'm going to kill you." And he very calmly, and whilst laughing, he was counting to 5. And it wasn't a swing, I was shaking, and he'd forced the bat into my hand, and I just sort of went like this, and he laughed and he grabbed the bat and he said, "You should have knocked me out while you had the chance, you stupid cunt." Whack. And I remember when I came to, and because I was unconscious, and his reactions, he was actually laughing. I remember waking up to like a really horrible laugh.
Yeah.
And I remember the blood profusely bleeding and absolutely covered. And he still at that time convinced me to concoct this story that I was bashed by other people, and he knew he'd take me to the hospital because it was bad.
Yeah.
And I was in and out of consciousness, and he took me at the same time. He drove halfway to the hospital, then stopped and said, "We've got to go back to get the evidence." So he, knowing that I could have bled out, bleeding on the brain or whatever, and he still went back to grab the bat and the sheets, the soaked linen with all the blood and everything else, because there was blood splatter all over the unit. He grabbed everything and then took his time to dump it up the back of the hospital before taking me to the emergency department, and at no point he left my side. As soon as he looked away, I said, "Help me, help me, help me, help me." And that was something that really frustrated me through what I went through, because all of the witness accounts and all of the evidence in the trial said that even police, when they attended after receiving a 000 phone call, I threw the phone under the bed. It was played during the Supreme Court. You could hear every punch and hit, and I was sexually assaulted. All of that was recorded. When police arrived, they didn't take him away from me. And that was even in the evidence, that why would I talk to, and they actually said the perpetrator stood by her side And she said nothing, she was okay, nothing had happened. Despite being visible injuries, they didn't actually remove him. And that was in the evidence in the trial. And something that I read over recently, as you know, because I've gone to these extreme lengths to get this documentation, and some of the things that I've read, and it's at the time when I went through what I went through, the laws have changed now. So if police suspect or they think that there's domestic violence, they can arrest the alleged perpetrator and remove them to give an opportunity to have counts, even when the victim's saying, no, they didn't do it, I love them, or whatever.
But in this case, they didn't remove use at all.
No, so the laws weren't there to protect me. I mean, my dad was a superintendent of the police force. And we'll hear from him, as you know, what he went through. And reading his victim impact statement recently, and I just was absolutely floored. What it did to him, how he was treated, and what he went through as a father and as a police officer. I think that all being said and done, and the court process was horrific. One of the biggest things I said to you was, we're asked to prove our trauma. We're asked to prove what's happened to us.
Yep.
We're looked at as a number or a job number by police at the times that they do.
And you're
attend.
expected to repeat your story over and over again. Yep.
Yeah, I remember, despite the overwhelming evidence, there were 17 witnesses and doctors and neighbours and everything that came in, and including his own friends who ended up folding when questioned. I mean, the perpetrator actually and his father went and did home invasions prior to the trial, or his father did on his behalf, and they did and threatened witnesses.
Yeah.
When my case was going forward. He took a plea deal, so he got 9 years. He took a plea mid-trial.
Yep.
They still put me through, so the charges that carried a longer sentence, he was looking up to 25 years for some of the offending. So mid-trial, after fucking crucifying me and making me relive my trauma and being questioned and called a liar by defence, and they called me promiscuous and I like it rough and all this fucking shit as a fucking child.
Yeah.
I was a child. Get angry, but you know, and the perpetrator actually attacked me in the fucking courtroom and threatened to kill my family. Like, it was so intense, which was it was evidential, like his respect for the law itself at all, you know, how violent he was. And, In
that courtroom, was that the last time you saw him?
No.
Okay.
No.
When was the last time you actually saw him?
He was out on parole for the offending towards me. He was successful in parole.
Yeah.
In the first few weeks of his parole, he found me.
And when you saw him?
I was holding my now 17-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
She was a baby at Hibiscus in the checkout. Was the very first time I saw him. And my knees buckled, and a stranger and her father grabbed me quickly, and he laughed and was like, come here, you little mouse, you know, and taunting. And he didn't care. Like, he just got out. You know, at the second occasion, many years later, I was out at Dundee, and I was married at the time to my ex-husband, and we were all out there fishing, having a great time, and I went to the bar to buy a couple of drinks, and someone started rubbing me on the shoulder, and I've gone, and I just, as soon as he opened his mouth, and he goes, he always called me his little mouse, and he said that because I was so frightened.
Yeah.
Like when a mouse would scamper.
Yeah.
And he just, that laugh, and, you know, and I started shaking. That I didn't even turn around, and the bartender went, are you, and I was like, no. My ex-husband and his friends knew something was wrong immediately, and he just started laughing. He was jumping around. My ex-husband ran over and he goes, well, come on then, let's fucking go, you know, and let's have a dance. That's what he was saying, let's have a dance. And I was like, no, like, because he would have killed my ex-husband. He was a very violent, like, it was, you know, and I remember just, he didn't care about the law. He didn't care about parole or conditions. You know, he sat outside my workplace when I was working at a rehabilitation centre in Sturt Park for days. He just wasn't frightened. This person, though, mind you, is in prison right now and has continued to perpetrate violence against women.
Other women, yep.
Horrific.
Yep.
Like horrific.
Yeah.
You know, he could have killed me at any stage in those assaults, and he continues to turn his nose up at the system. He doesn't give a shit.
So what do we do? Like, what's our advice for people like this? Do you know what I mean? Especially with the laws and things like that.
And that's hard for me. And for 16 years, I've kind of gone into the career that I have. And before, what I'm doing right now is, you know, like I did a lot of work in Queensland working with high-risk offenders and perpetrators and men for domestic violence. We were like, fuck, how did you do that? And for me, the driving force for me, I built relationships with these men, working relationships. Some of these blokes I worked with for 12 months. Yeah. You know, I saw 2-3 times a week. And they were some of the most violent male perpetrators ever. And it tried to be intimidating, all the rest of it. And I guess for me, I started doing the work because I thought, everyone's like, how could you do that? Like, after what happened to you, how could you do that? And I said, well, if I'm reducing or minimising the risk of that person doing that to someone else, then that's also my healing and enough for me.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's why we both do what we do, is because if we're helping others, then that helps us.
Yeah.
With our story.
And I know we was yarning earlier, and, you know, everyone in Darwin, a lot of people in Darwin know me, well known. We could probably talk about my story for hours and hours into the detail.
But we won't, because we've only got...
We won't.
How long have we got?
It's a long time. But, you know, I think that, when I started to reclaim and rebuild my life, but as I said, I say to people out there, you talk about healing, don't put a time frame on it and don't think that it's a quick fix.
No.
For me, 24 years later, I'm still working on it. You know, I have really good times where everything's really good, and then other times I spoke to you about, you know, I got into a car and there was a car refreshener or whatever they call them, and it was the same that he had in his car, and just the smell, and I couldn't breathe. I went into a panic attack and it took me back. A lot of the times now, a bit desensitised and dissociated, and I say that I'm desensitised to a lot of things, but really, I'm probably more fragile and vulnerable now than I ever was, to be honest. As much as I've got this hard exterior and do what I do, and I'm a pest and I'm a menace, and we all know I like to have a good time, but there's a very raw and fragile side to me. And I like to explain it like, you know, there's only so many times you can throw a rock at a windscreen before it shatters, before you can put the temporary glues or whatever it might be. And, that windscreen for me is shattered.
Yeah. And so I don't know if you remember the conversation we had this morning, but that's something I wanted to touch on with you around your self-medicating. What do you normally do and when is it that you do it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you want to speak a little bit about, and what we're talking about, guys, is just, you know, Chelsea does like to drink. But then in saying that, you know, it's not always for...
I kind of changed why I like to drink now.
Yeah, we just want to talk about why she drinks, because it's not all because, you know, she's happy chappy. There's a reason why she drinks as well. And we're going to look at we need to talk about the underlying impacts of that.
Yep.
So if you want to talk about that.
Look, I took up drinking as a result of what happened very heavily. You know, at the ages of 16, 17, I would drink a bottle of OP rum to myself to complete blackout, because I was so scared to go to sleep because of my nightmares. So my parents, when I was with them during this healing process or what was going on, when I was just fucked, there'd be a bucket by the bed. I would vomit. I would bedwet, wake up shaking, the trauma and the nightmares, and I was basically a shell. I didn't exist. Chelsea was gone. There was nothing left of me. I couldn't deal with the nightmares, and things were so bad. I would just drink to black out. And I would drink to the point that the worst part about it is that you drink to numb everything. But when I was in those states of blackout drunk, I was the most angry, violent, nasty. I mean, I was in Watch House nearly every weekend.
Yeah.
I was known for it.
And how many years did you do this for?
I think about like a solid 2.5 years.
Yeah, from childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I started to learn some healing and I took myself to, I had those breaks and, I met my daughter's father and things and, I went out with friends and had a good time, party, we were kids and all that sort of stuff, but I wasn't in that way. I had already started healing and was really good. And then I went through a major significant trauma again in some of the blows that I took after what I went through, and it just felt like just as I started to come good, you just get fucking nailed. So I went back to old behaviours, and that was, I can't deal with this. I think when he passed away, my daughter's father, I think I dragged myself into oblivion for 3 weeks. When I stepped up and, looking at my daughter, that I had to make changes. And I did for a long time, and I take myself to uni and I was working and I was doing all those things. But then again, I would revert when something really bad happened. Whilst I went through all this counselling, I was taught strategies and tools, but I wasn't putting them into practice. And I was
Why weren't you putting them into practice rather than stop drinking? Why did you still go to drinking?
It was kind of it was a hard one because I drank with friends and we had good times. The only time it was an issue was when, then I'd drink alone or I was trying to suppress demons. Because I can go out and I'd, go to nice dinners with my parents and have one glass of wine and enjoy a meal and as a normal person. So I could enjoy a drink and put it down. But when things surfaced me, which I would bottle up and then not go to people about, I would try and drown it and I'd fall back into those traps really easily.
Do you think you still do that?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That's not a secret.
Really hard, hey?
That's not a secret to anybody. Like, I did this challenge and, I lost all this weight and I did 100 days alcohol free and all that sort of stuff. And I'll tell you what, when I did, that was when my very good friend who I called my sister had taken her life.
So I guess the reason why I bring it up.
I wanted to say that in the first couple of weeks of what made me stop was I saw the kids watching and the kids looking at me, her kids, my daughter, and I didn't want that to be the picture of how we were going to deal with things. So I committed to this 100 days and stuff like that. And it was hard. I think in the first 2 weeks, on the drive home, I used to drive around the roundabout several times before the bottle lights went off.
Yeah.
Like, go around again. Don't do it. Just drive straight home, and I was really proud that I'd done that time. But most certainly sometimes things happen. There's still a lot of triggers and trauma and stuff that I've been through.
Yeah.
Violence on violence and trauma on trauma, and it's just
100%.
And so it's still
sometimes
something
you just need a break from it. Hey, so your break is just having a drink.
But when I do that, I mean, it's not all sad and sorrowful. Like might ring you up and have a yarn on FaceTime.
I've seen both your sides.
I think everyone's seen both those sides.
Yeah. And I just want to say, look, Chels, and I think you know this anyway because we did talk about it. It's not about me putting you on the spot because you drink, but also showcasing that this can happen to just anybody.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't.
It happens to a non-Indigenous woman that has had a good upbringing, but because she's had trauma, impacted by ongoing trauma, she turns to alcohol. But if you look at these Aboriginal people on the street, people just think, they're just having a fat old time, they're useless.
Without knowing their stories.
Without understanding the amount of trauma they go through.
Yeah.
Like, it can impact anybody. It doesn't matter whether you're white, black,
Brindle, green,
male,
whatever.
female, it doesn't matter. When trauma impacts you, a lot of people cannot handle it and they turn to self-medication.
And look, and I speak to, and, I'm sorry for saying this, Dad, if I bring this up, and a lot of police will actually identify with this. My dad did 38 years in the Northern Territory Police Force.
Yeah.
He gave his fucking all. A lot of things happened to him, and knowingly for myself, mind you, my dad's a great bloke. Anyone that's met him, and people use the phrase, take the shirt off your back. Fuck, my dad would do a hell of a lot more than that for just about anybody. I absolutely fucking love him, and a lot of people do. And, he hasn't always rubbed everyone the right way, as anyone does. But, he's very open about, particularly when he left the police force and he stopped working. And when the PTSD hit for him and the lack of fucking supports, everything else. And my dad's a drinker. It's no fucking secret. Everyone in Darwin knows. And I'm not fucking embarrassed or shamed for him.
No.
No one knows what the hell he has gone through. It was very hard for my dad and other police. Only in the newspaper the other day for, I won't say his name, and it's been posted over Facebook that took his life, and other fellow police family and what they deal with as a result of the job, the lack of supports and things like that. You know, my dad's very open about his PTSD, and yeah, he does drink. That's never been a secret, and I know why. And, you know, my mum doesn't drink. She's a non-drinker, you know, and me and my dad are very much the same. We're both big-mouthed, big personalities, but both very caring, huge hearts, and
I can definitely vouch for that. That's what drew me to you as a friend. You're the most loyalist friend. I'm not just saying that because we do this podcast together. We're doing this podcast together because I trust you 100%. You're my loyalist friend and I love you unconditionally. You can drink yourself stupid. I don't care. I'm still always hear from you.
Look, and I do have those moments too, like whilst we're talking about alcohol, as you know, that, you know, I'm also a mum.
Yeah.
I also wear a professional hat and I do what I do. And, you know, I finished studies the other day as well.
Yes.
You know, I'm always
very proud.
Whilst we've gone through this trauma, and I want to add, we talk about healing, that we are functioning. We still hurt, and there's parts of our stories that still hurt us. But there's also really beautiful sides of us and our kids. And I've got two amazing, beautiful children.
Yes.
Amazing friends and family. I am very blessed. My team at work and my boss and things like that. And, you know, I think it's really important that when you're going through something like domestic violence is to really look at who you're surrounding yourself with, because that's so important. If I did not have those supports, my family, especially my mum and my dad around me, I guarantee I would not be here. My countless attempts of suicide.
So on saying that, what would you say to another young person or a woman that's going through what you've been through and just say they don't have the help? You know, they don't have the family connections or community connection. What would you advise?
I would say don't isolate and don't shelter yourself, because what you're going through is, number one, it's not your fault, and somebody is going to hear you. They're going to give you an opportunity to listen to you and tell your story. Don't think that you're alone, because you're not. And there's so many services and supports out there nowadays that you can break free and you can get away from that situation. And whilst you may not see it or understand it now, you can heal. You know, we speak about scars. I've got a lot of physical scars, but the worst ones are in here that people don't see. But one thing I can say, as much as, you know, sometimes I have good days and I have bad days, that if you met me 20 years ago, you wouldn't recognise who I am today and my achievements and everything that I've done. And I can tell you that with the right supports and the right family and the right friends, that you're not broken, you're unbreakable.
Yay! Okay, no worries. So I think we'll leave it there, Chels. Thank you for your story. I appreciate everything that at the end of the day, seeing you come out from the other side, I'm just so grateful that we met and we're friends, and love you so much, and grateful for the human being you are today.
I love you too.
Yay.
Thanks for listening, guys. We hope to have you guys come on in a lot of future episodes. Just a reminder, this isn't just our story. This is about creating a platform for women, such as ourselves and or men.
And men,
because, you know, we understand it's, you know, not just one way, but we also, you know, we're going to have a lot of very exciting specialists and experts and things coming on as well, and an author that's written an amazing book on her story of domestic violence. So we're very excited to bring her on. But stay tuned, open up the comments, and look, if you've got something to say and you've got a story, don't feel shame to hit us up. Have a crack and, have the courage, because we're backing you and you need to back yourself too. So,
and we'll take care of you. Look, at the end of the day, we know this is not the easiest thing to do. Both Chelsea and I was really anxious this morning driving in because, you know, and even for me, I don't feel like, sometimes I don't think like I can give it all, but I've given you a bit. so you understand why I am the way I am. But at the end of the day, it's just really, it's hard for all of us, but we are there to support you if you need that support, and we are there for you to tell your story if you're comfortable enough to do that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for having us and listening to us and tuning in. Tune in for some more exciting stuff down the track. Can't wait to have you on board.